What if the monster you've been hunting turns out to be wearing your reflection? That thought has haunted me every single night since I looked into the eyes of a terrified little girl and realized how blind I'd been. I used to believe evil was loud, reckless, obvious, but the real kind, it's silent, calculated. It hides behind polished smiles, expensive suits, and handshakes I trusted. I built an empire to feel safe, untouchable, but nothing, not money, not power, not prestige, could prepare me for the moment a child whispered, "He hurts me," and I realized he was one of mine. That was the moment my carefully controlled world cracked open and something inside me broke with it. You think you've heard stories like this before, but I promise you haven't, because by the time this story ends, someone you thought was untouchable will fall, and someone you never expected will become a hero. Stay with me, because what I uncovered next didn't just shatter everything I thought I knew. It nearly destroyed me. The cold air sliced through Alexander Reed's tailored coat like a knife. But it wasn't the wind that made him stop in his tracks. It was the sound, barely audible like a whisper from the dark. The boogeyman hurts me every night. He turned, scanning the dimly lit hallway of Westbridge Hills, the luxury high-rise where he owned the top 2 floors. Down by the service elevator, curled into herself on the stone bench, was a little girl. Thin, dirty, trembling. Her knees pulled to her chest like she was trying to disappear. "Excuse me?" he asked, voice uncharacteristically soft. The girl looked up. Her eyes were sunken hollow, with a bruise peeking from beneath a tangled mess of chestnut hair. She couldn't have been more than 7. "Please don't make me go back," she whispered. Alexander wasn't a man easily rattled. He'd built Reed Global Holdings from the ground up, turned around failing businesses, fired CEOs with a flick of his pen. But this child didn't belong in his world. Still, something inside him twisted a tight, unfamiliar knot in his chest. "What's your name, Sophie?" Her voice cracked like dried leaves. "Sophie Bennett." He crouched slowly, eyes level with hers. "Who is the boogeyman, Sophie?" She hesitated, lips trembling. "He lives with me, my stepdad. He hurts me when Mom's not looking, and sometimes when she is." She looked away. She used to work for someone named Mr. Reed, but then she stopped. He said she failed. That's when things got worse. Alexander's heart skipped. He knew that name, Bennett. Olivia Bennett had been a project coordinator at Reed Global. She'd suddenly resigned a week ago, citing personal matters. He hadn't given it a second thought. Sophie flinched when a gust of wind howled through the corridor. "He finds me no matter where I hide," she whispered. "I only came here because I thought maybe you could help." And just like that, Alexander's world tilted. He reached for his phone and dialed 911. The operator transferred him to local precinct dispatch. Within 15 minutes, a patrol car pulled up to the lobby entrance. Sophie recoiled as the officers approached, clinging to Alexander's coat. "What have we got?" one of the officers asked, his tone casual, dismissive. "She says she's being abused by her stepfather," Alexander replied, standing protectively in front of her. The older officer gave a sigh. "Runaway, probably. These kids know how to play it. Make up stories, get sympathy, maybe some food and a bed for the night." "She has bruises," Alexander snapped, "and she's terrified. Doesn't that warrant more than an eye roll?" The cop shrugged. "We'll file a report, but don't expect much. If she runs again, not our problem." And then they were gone, leaving Sophie behind on the marble floor like forgotten luggage. Alexander stood there for a long moment, staring at the patrol car's taillights fading into the dark. Every instinct screamed at him to go back upstairs, pour a scotch, and pretend none of this ever happened. But when he looked down, Sophie's tiny hands clutched his coat like it was a lifeline. He didn't say a word, just bent down and scooped her into his arms. "You'll stay with me tonight," he said, more to himself than to her. Her head rested against his chest, and he felt it, a single sob muffled against his heart. Back in his penthouse, the sterile silence greeted them. He hadn't let anyone into this space in years, not since his divorce. But tonight, the luxury didn't feel indulgent. It felt shameful. He led Sophie to the guest bathroom and helped her wash off the grime and fear. She didn't cry when he cleaned the cuts on her knees. She was too used to pain. Later, she curled up on the leather sofa, clutching a throw blanket like armor. Her breathing evened out, but her brow remained furrowed in sleep. Alexander sat across from her phone, still in hand. He should have called child services. He should have handed her over to someone more qualified, someone trained, but he couldn't. Not after what she'd said. He sent a message to his head of HR and asked for Olivia Bennett's personnel file. Within minutes he had it. High performing, no disciplinary marks. But a resignation submitted suddenly with no follow-up. Odd. He picked up the phone again. "Marcus," he said to his head of internal security, "I need you to run a background check on Derek Walsh, associated with Olivia Bennett. Look for any ties to rival firms. Don't use company servers." As the night deepened, Alexander sat awake in the shadows. He couldn't shake the image of Sophie's bruised arms, her whisper. He said she failed. Failed what? Then came the email. No subject line, no sender, just a recording. He clicked play. It was Olivia's voice, weak, panicked. "If something happens to me, please, someone protect Sophie. I wouldn't give them the files. I told Derek I'd rather die. And I think he believed me." The file ended. Silence filled the room like a scream. Alexander leaned back, stunned. The implications crashed into him. Olivia had been coerced to steal company secrets, and when she refused, she vanished. Her daughter was left behind as bait or punishment, and the man responsible was likely planted by a rival corporation. He glanced over at Sophie, still asleep, her small frame barely making a dent in the sofa. For a moment he wondered if he was being manipulated, if this was a setup, but no scheme could fake those bruises. No corporate espionage could manufacture that kind of fear in a child's eyes. This wasn't about strategy or leverage. This was about right and wrong. He turned off the lights but didn't leave the room. He sat by the window watching over her. As dawn bled into the sky, Alexander Reed faced the one question clawing at his conscience. If I step into this fight, I may lose everything I've built. But if I walk away, what kind of man does that make me? The morning sun bled through the skyline like an open wound, casting long shadows across the glass walls of Reed Global Tower. Alexander stood in his office, but his mind was nowhere near spreadsheets, forecasts, or board meetings. His thoughts were with the little girl curled up safely back at his penthouse Sophie. The night had changed something in him. He wasn't sure what not yet, but the voice recording of Olivia Bennett still echoed in his ears, each word a blow to everything he believed his company stood for. Someone had used his name, his trust, his structure as a weapon against one of his own people. His private line buzzed. It was Marcus Lane. "You were right," Marcus said. "Derek Walsh has connections to a shell company tied to TitanCore." TitanCore, a name that made Alexander's blood run cold. They were his fiercest competitor, ruthless in boardrooms and beyond. A few years ago, Reed Global had beaten them out of a multi-billion-dollar contract, and now it looked like they had found another way in through betrayal, manipulation, and a little girl's pain. "He's not just a threat to your data," Marcus continued. "He's a threat to her." Alexander tightened his grip on the phone. "I want everything. Financials, surveillance, contacts. I don't care if we have to follow him to hell." He ended the call and turned toward the window. His reflection stared back, sharp suit, sharp jaw, emotionless eyes. But there was something new now. A crack. A question. Back at Westbridge Hills, Sophie awoke with a gasp. Alexander had left a note by the bedside. "You're safe. Stay inside. I'll be back soon." There was hot oatmeal in the kitchen, a warm blanket, and silence. But her eyes were drawn to the window. She didn't feel safe, not really. Later that afternoon, Alexander returned. Sophie didn't run to him, but she didn't shrink away either. "Did you find my mom?" she asked, voice quiet. "I'm working on it," he replied gently. "I promised Sophie we're going to fix this." As she nodded, he noticed something in her hand. A crumpled sketch. It was Derek's face sketched with remarkable detail for a child. "That's him," she said. "He has a scar on his thumb. He smells like cigars. And he always whispers when he's angry, like it's a secret." Alexander knelt beside her. "Would you be willing to tell all of this to someone who can help us?" She hesitated, then nodded. "But only if you're there too." That night, Alexander arranged a meeting with Detective Claire Morgan, one of the few people in law enforcement he trusted. She met them discreetly at his home. Claire listened to Sophie's story without interruption. Her jaw tightened. This is bigger than abuse. This is manipulation, extortion, possibly human endangerment under corporate espionage statutes. Alexander already knew that. What he didn't expect was how calm he felt hearing it out loud. Not business calm, battle calm. We'll need evidence, Claire added. And fast. If he catches wind of this investigation, he could disappear or worse. Alexander already had a plan. He invited Derek Walsh to a private executive strategy session at the tower the next morning. Derek arrived all smiles, confident and easy, like a man who'd already won. "Alex," he drawled, "didn't expect to see you handling internal reviews personally. Must be serious." "Oh, it is," Alexander replied coolly. "You've got your fingerprints on more than you realize." Derek paused, the faintest flicker of discomfort in his eyes. "That's so," Alexander smiled, sharp and cold. "Tell me something, Derek. Why would Titan Corp transfer $400,000 to a shell company 3 days after you were hired at Reed Global?" There it was, the twitch in the jaw, the shift in posture, the predator caught mid-hunt. "I don't know what you're insinuating," Derek said too casually. "No," Alexander said. "You don't, but you will." Derek moved to leave. "I've got a board meeting." "Not anymore." 2 security officers stepped into the room silently. Derek froze. "I suggest you sit," Alexander said, "and listen very carefully." What followed was 30 minutes of controlled chaos. Claire, now patched in via call, walked Derek through a list of charges that had been carefully stacked over the last 24 hours. Alexander had pulled every string, burned every favor, and even risked public scandal to fast-track the investigation. Derek said nothing, but the panic in his eyes grew with each accusation. When he finally snapped, it wasn't with denial, it was with venom. "You think you're the hero in this? You're not. You're just another suit-playing savior because your conscience is bleeding." Alexander stood, his voice low and lethal. "Maybe I am, but I'm the man standing between you and the girl you tortured." Later that night, Claire secured a protective order for Sophie, but the adrenaline hadn't faded. As Alexander watched her sleep again, curled in the corner of his guest room, he felt a storm building. This wasn't over. Not even close. Derek might be detained, but Titan Corp was still out there. And Olivia Bennett, still missing. Suddenly his phone buzzed. A restricted number. He answered. A distorted voice spoke. "If you keep digging, Mr. Reed, you won't like what you find. Back off, or next time the little girl won't just have bruises." The call ended. Alexander stared at the phone, pulse pounding. There it was. The threat. The line in the sand. This wasn't a business war anymore. This was personal. He walked to the window, staring down at the city, its glittering lights masking the rot beneath. He had built this empire to feel untouchable. But now the very walls he'd built for protection were closing in. He turned toward the hallway where Sophie slept in peace, unaware of the storm brewing outside. And for the first time in his life, Alexander Reed asked himself a question, not about profit or power, but about purpose. If protecting her means burning everything I've built, am I ready to lose the world to save one child? The days that followed moved like a storm, fast, furious, and laced with moments that carved themselves into Alexander Reed's soul. He was no longer the cold executive who once believed feelings were liabilities. Not after what he had seen, not after holding a terrified child in his arms, listening to her describe nightmares that weren't dreams at all, but memories. Not after discovering how close evil had crept into his world, hiding behind smiles and polished suits. Derek Walsh had been formally charged, his ties to Titan Corp exposed with enough evidence to keep him behind bars for decades. But the true victory came not in the courtroom, nor in the headlines that followed it, came in the quiet moments. In Sophie's eyes when she finally smiled without fear, in the steady voice she used when she spoke to the prosecutor, in the way she stood tall when she saw Derek in court and didn't flinch. Still, there was one thing left unresolved: Olivia Bennett. Alexander had searched everywhere. He'd used every contact, tapped every resource. No leads, no signs, only silence. And silence was crueler than any answer. Then one rainy afternoon, Claire Morgan called. "We got her," she said simply. Olivia had been found in an abandoned cabin 2 hours outside Boston, weak and bruised but alive. Alexander didn't wait. He drove there himself. When Olivia saw her daughter again, the sound that escaped her lips was unlike anything he had ever heard, a mixture of relief and pain, love and regret, all tangled into a single breath. Sophie ran into her mother's arms, burying her face in her chest, sobbing uncontrollably. Alexander turned away, giving them space, his throat tight. That night, as they sat in his living room, mother and daughter curled up together under a warm blanket, Olivia turned to him. "I don't know how to thank you," she said softly. "You don't have to," he replied. "I should have protected you both from the beginning. You were under my roof. My name gave them power." "No," she whispered, "your name saved us in the end." Her words stayed with him. Weeks passed. Headlines eventually faded. The public eye turned to newer scandals. But Alexander didn't return to his old life. Something inside had changed permanently. He stepped down from his role at Reed Global Holdings, shocking the business world. The board offered him every incentive to stay, but his mind was already elsewhere, on something more meaningful, more lasting. He launched Sophie's Hope Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to protecting children in crisis and supporting single mothers escaping abuse. The mission was simple: make sure no one ever slipped through the cracks the way Olivia and Sophie had. He used his wealth not as a shield, but as a tool. He transformed several corporate buildings into safe shelters. He funded legal aid. He built a network of care instead of control. For the first time in his life, his empire served people, not profits. And Sophie, she blossomed. With therapy, love, and the safety she'd never known, she began to heal. She took art classes. She laughed. She even started calling Alexander Uncle Alex. It caught him off guard the first time, but he didn't correct her. He never would. One quiet Sunday morning, as they sat on the porch watching the sun rise, Sophie turned to him and asked, "Do you think monsters ever go away for good?" He looked at her, saw the strength behind the question, the fragile hope. "Maybe not all of them," he said, "but the ones that matter most, the ones that live inside us. They go away when we stop running and start fighting." She nodded slowly, her hand slipping into his. In that moment, Alexander understood something deeper than all the lessons life had tried to teach him through money or loss. True success wasn't about power or control, it was about courage. The courage to act when it was easier to look away. The courage to stand up when it wasn't convenient. The courage to love even when it was painful. He had gained millions, but nothing ever made him feel richer than seeing Sophie safe, loved, and free. As he watched her chase the morning light down the driveway with her sketchbook in hand, Alexander Reed smiled, not the tight business smile he once wore, but something softer, something real. He'd started this journey thinking he was saving a little girl, but in truth, she had saved him too. Now let me ask you, have you ever faced a moment where you had to choose between comfort and conscience? Would you risk everything you built to do the right thing, even if no one else would? What did you think of this story? Did it move you in any way? Thank you so much for staying with us until the end and letting this journey unfold in your heart. If you enjoyed this emotional story, please comment number 3 below. If you found it just okay, comment number 2, and if it didn't quite land with you, feel free to leave number 1. Your honest thoughts help us grow. Tell us, what country are you watching from? We'd love to know how far this story has reached. Don't forget to like, share, and spread this message of hope. We'll see you next time with another deeply moving story.